Prescription products require completion of an online medication consultation with an independent healthcare provider through the LifeMD platform and are only available if prescribed. Subscription required. Individual results may vary. Additional restrictions apply at lifemd.com. Read all warnings before using GLP-1s. Side effects may include a risk of thyroid C-cell tumors. Do not use GLP-1s if you or your family have a history of thyroid cancer.
Should GLP-1 weight loss medication like Wegovy and Zepbound cost thousands of dollars? We don't think so. TryLifeMD.com helps provide insurance access to the leading GLP-1 medications. Visit TryLifeMD.com and check your eligibility for GLP-1 medication with copays as low as $0. Listen to Bridget's story after losing 55 pounds and using her insurance for coverage.
LifeMD helped me get covered with my insurance. Finding out that it was covered was huge. I've lost 55 pounds. I am so much healthier now that I've lost the weight. I would never be able to do it without them.
Get started today and check your eligibility for GLP-1 medication with copays as low as $0 at TryLifeMD.com. That's TryLifeMD.com.
Hello and welcome to the Cardiff Central podcast. It's 10 points out of 10 for the Blue and Blacks after Munster were dispatched at the Arms Park on Friday night. We'll be discussing the crowd, the subs, whether Falatown makes the plane to Australia, and Hurricane Harry Millard's restoration period. Next up is South Africa with questions about how Jockey approaches that. Well, elsewhere, the Rags get the SRC playoffs underway with another Esposti derby, and we start squad building for next season with a look at known and possible departures.
You're listening to the Cardiff Central podcast.
On the panel this week, we've got Andrew Ford. Andrew, how are you?
Yeah, very good. Thanks, mate.
Good stuff. Simon Jones. Simon, how are you?
Yeah, good. Sun is shining. Cardiff's winning. What more could we want, eh?
Loving life. And Tony Esposti. Tony, how are you? Oh, great start to the pod for Tony. He's on mute.
Oh, I'm having a nightmare afternoon. Sorry. My heart rate has finally come down after Friday, and I still can't use technology, it seems.
Just like we were discussing off pod then, that Jake Ball coming back for the Scarlets is a throwback. Also asking people to unmute is now a throwback as well. We're taking the podcast back in time to like 2019-20 slowly. We'll start on Friday night then at the Arms Park. Cardiff beat Munster 26-21 in a game that there was a very tense first half. Cardiff turned the screw a little bit in the first part of the second half and then spent 15 minutes just about expertly managing the game to hold on and keep the Irish side at bay in a weekend where Welsh sides did prevail largely over Irish rugby. I'm not saying we're back or anything, but it was nice to have a little victory over them. There was a lot of three-word reactions. Winning does seem to enhance interaction on social media, so maybe we can continue to do that. But Simon said determination, discipline. Rob said much better discipline. Dave never gave up. Matthew said we fought till the end. Mark said that was brilliant. Ben said love this team, and Dav, one of the media lads at the club, said umline fucking Kaya Deed, which I think is I don't know if he would tweet that from the official Cardiff Rugby Twitter necessarily, but it seems that's all right to reply to us. Andrew, coming to you first. Like, that was some night at the Arms Park, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was unbelievable. I still, like, the next day and even Sunday, I was just on such a high from it. I couldn't quite believe that it happened. It wasn't the Munster were missing a few players, but I thought we showed so much guts to get the win, especially as you mentioned at the end there. It was proper squeaky bum time, so I was kind of buzzing that we got the win right at the end.
Simon, Jockey had asked before the game for the performance of the season. We got pretty close to that, I think. Can't think of many better this year.
No, certainly, from the point at which they scored, which was about the 48th minute, 50th minute. It was around that point, and your heart started to sink a little bit because we were in the game. It was one of those where you thought we're in the game, and now is this just going to slip away, as we saw with Connaught at home. And from that point on, we just controlled the game out. And even those last, deep, I think the clock ended up on 83, 84 minutes. Even that last set, you never felt they were going to break through. So in terms of, a controlled performance that we all want from Cardiff against what was a good Munster side. I don't think it's certainly not a vintage Munster side because, you see where they are in the table. But we controlled out that period better than I've seen a Cardiff side for a long while against a quality opposition. I don't think they looked like, from the point they scored their try, I don't think they really looked. I don't think they really got into our 22. I don't think we gave away too many penalties that allowed them to get that kind of set piece momentum, which, we know, like the Ospreys, once they get a bit of momentum behind them on the set piece, it's very difficult to get the ball back off them. But yeah, I think it was controlled. We took our chances. We probably left a few out there as well. It would have been nice to deny them a losing bonus point. I think that would have just made it a little bit, for our own qualification purposes, it puts them a little bit further back. But I don't think you could really ask for much more. I think what was kind of impressive as well, as the replacements came on, our scrum started to win penalties, which was a weakness in the first half, and that was the worry. They'd get a scrum in their 22, they'd push us back, win a penalty, and then release. And I think the pressure's released, and I think that's been a bit of a problem this season. But we start to get the upper hand in that. My friend always talks about painting the picture for the referee at scrum, and we were dominant. So even if they weren't penalties, the referee was kind of like going, well, I'm assuming that this is the way it's going. It's always a bit of a lottery. But yeah, like Andrew said, just at the end, just the outpouring at the end, like Gabe Hamer-Webb. I know we talk about him a lot on the pod, but it was jumping up and down along that end of the terrace. You could see how much it meant to them. It's been a difficult few weeks, but to back up, 5 points against the Ospreys with 5 points against Munster, you couldn't hope for more. Just really well controlled.
I'm so pleased it was Sheedy that got the turnover right at the very end as well, after the inevitable missed kicks as well throughout the game. For him to be the one to get his hands in, scoop that ball out, and win it to lash it off the field, it was just superb.
Yeah, I think he's. I think we said it a couple of times now. In terms of the way he's running the game in the last 3, 4, 5 games, it's shown why we brought him in.
Yeah,
because he hasn't got the longest kick in the world. We know that for kicking for touch. His goal kicking is ropey, but some of the touches of putting players into space, knowing when to take the ball into contact as well on Friday night. There was a couple of times where it was a bit like, oh, where's he going? But would just take the ball in. I think he's shown why we've signed him in these last few games, because that's what we wanted from him and Aled Davis, was in these tight games, just control it. And it feels like it's just taking him a bit of time to bed in, and whatever it is, even though he's experienced, it does take time in a new squad and everything. But yeah, I thought they were all excellent, to be honest. It's difficult to pick out one. I think Faletau rightly got man of the match because he was just incredible. But yeah, I agree, Tony. I think Sheedy deserves the credit, not just for this, but for the Ospreys game and the other couple of games he's put in as well.
Some of his touches this season have been superb, like you were saying. I feel like I have this conversation every week on the terrace when we're there. We don't win half the games we have this year if Sheedy's not at 10. Some of his little passes, and it just feels like it frees Ben up, like we were talking about the last time I was on the pod, to be a more complete 12. He has the ability to take the ball to the line when he has to. He doesn't have to force it all the time. So yeah, you're right. He's become the player we were hoping. Just needs to tidy up the kicking a little bit, and then my heart rate might not be 150 at about 60 minutes of a game.
Andrew, it feels like a bit of a cliche to keep saying in games that we've won that, we'd have lost that last season. But like looking at the last 2 games, the Ospreys and Munster, maybe even like the first part of this season, like we'd have definitely of those games, wouldn't we? The discipline and the game management has taken a huge step forward. I think Simon mentioned earlier that we didn't let them into our 22. I think where Sheedy turns that ball over at the end was the furthest up the pitch they got from the moment that we scored our last points in sort of 66 minutes or so. Like that's a massive improvement, isn't it?
Oh yeah, 100%. We were saying the same last season when we were getting those losing bonus points. We were saying season before we'd have been smashed out of the park. So it's definitely a cliche going on, but like it's the right way around there that we're saying we're winning these games this season. And yeah, 100%. it was a proper performance that I think last season or the season before as well, we'd have just crumbled in the last 20 minutes. But yeah, we were proper up front against them. And I mentioned this to you on the night as well, but at the breakdown, they were so solid and so hard to kind of compete with, especially when they had the ball. Like our USP is always like jack or threats. And obviously we got a few turnovers, and Sheedy's was a particular highlight. But it was so hard to live with them. So it was so impressive that we kind of fronted up in defence. And that's something that's really been missing the last few seasons. I think our pack just proper put in a great performance.
I think as well, Andrew, we didn't, from the early point, we didn't chase those turnovers either. There's that beautiful Thomas Young one, which I'm not sure is entirely legal, whether he released, but it was such a clean turnover. But, there's been points of the season where we've said we haven't played the referee well. The Connaught game away, where we kept competing at breakdown, we weren't going to get turnover penalties. I thought what we did really well on Friday was just recognise that we don't need to compete there. And against the Ospreys, we gave away silly penalties. They weren't going to score from halfway, the Ospreys. We could have just defended that point, but if you give them a penalty, they're going to score from inside your 22. It's exactly the same with Munster. They didn't really look like kind of breaking from halfway and going the length. So I think it was kind of like a learning of, okay, we'll just hold them here. No silly penalties. Don't chase the ball too much. They're not moving us around a lot. We're well covered. We trust, us to make our individual tackles. And it is, Sandra, credit to the defensive system. But it's now feeling like we're trusting that system and not chasing turnovers that will just give a cheap penalty away. And probably last season or early in the season, in that last phase, we'd have given a penalty away for an offside or somebody just trying to end the game by turning the ball over. And then they're in our 22, and suddenly, like the Lions game, we're defending our own line for a game that we should be winning. So I think that progression across it's good to see. It feels like, okay, we don't need to do that anymore.
Tony, we talk a lot on the pod about sort of the individual development of players, and obviously have done since the start of last season where we had all those youngsters. But perhaps overlooked slightly is the individual development of the coaches as well. They were very inexperienced and young in a few places. I think on Friday, Matt Sherratt's use of substitutions, both sort of the impact of them and the timing of them, that was sort of a major impact on the night, wasn't it?
Yeah, I can't remember whether it was a conversation on the podcast or one that me and you had with a pint, but I wonder whether his time with Wales has helped that, because that step up and understanding, these things can make the change. It seems to be since he's come back from that Wales period, he's been more proactive with changes and not waiting until people are blowing and lying on the deck. Like Simon mentioned earlier about the scrum getting stronger as the game went on. Really early doors, it looked really unsettled, and Munster were getting penalties out of that, and he made changes when I think beginning of the year he probably would have kept players on like another 5 or 10 minutes until they were done. But the last few weeks he's been bringing players on a lot earlier, and that's worked to our advantage, because we've then had that period of time where we've been up against tired players in the scrum, and we're getting that area of dominance, which then builds on Simon's point of we're presenting that good picture. We're also complementing Necky's hair throughout the game to make sure that he knows when he can swipe it back and stuff like that, and that's getting us decisions as well. But yeah, like I think coming back from Wales, not only has it improved some of the players, but also it's improved Sherratt massively.
Absolutely. And sticking on coaching theme, Simon, Gareth Collins on Blue Sky sent a message in the week asking about the impact of Cornel van Zyl on Cardiff as forwards coach. Says he's more unheralded than Jockey or Mellon, but our set piece has benefited considerably. is a question that I had down as well. Like, is he sort of an outside bet for signing of the season in many respects, as despite not being a player? Because I think if somebody had said, "Oh, you get 10 points out of 10 from Munster and Ospreys and dominate them in sort of the maul and the contact area," if you even if somebody had said that sort of 2 months ago, you kind of gone, I'm not sure Cardiff rugby really, but it has actually happened over the last week.
Yeah, no, I think he's. I'm definitely no forwards coach, so maybe I'll defer to others on it. But our set piece has definitely improved. We aren't as easy to score against. There is still that. I think as well. It feels like the 6 front rowers that we've got. There's not a sudden dip. If, like, I'd say our first choice, the run the front row come off, it's not like, oh, that's then a huge dip, which we've had previously. Whereas if, that first choice front row are struggling, we're bringing on another front row that's going to struggle even more. I think he's mixed it up really well as well. It's selection, but it feels like those 6 have all come on in terms of their scrummaging and their ability. I think Southwell shows up so well around the park as well. I love Mulder's comment of him knowing that it was a forward pass as soon as he received it as well, and hoping that nobody was going to check it. But so I think that the whole coaching ticket has started to work. I think it's almost kind of, it's one of the reasons why I know we've kind of had chats about Jockey going with Wales or going off to I think it would be a real blow if he did, because I think I agree with you, Tony. I think he's brought some learnings back from Wales. I think, Mellon's defensive system seems to be, as I said, there's more trust in it. Everyone seems to know their job. Van Ziel has definitely got the pack more cohesive, more coherent, but that isn't at the expense of being more expansive when it needs to be. It was obvious that we were, against both the Ospreys and Munster, trying to get to edges, trying to move their forwards around, because we believe we have the fitness and the agility within our forwards to cope with that type of game. So it's not kind of like we've compromised at all. I think if Jockey left, you're kind of rebuilding and starting again, even though, it could be a promotion from within. I think they all seem to work together really well. And I think that would be my major worry is, best of luck to Jockey. If he's offered something, wouldn't hold it against him at all, deserves it. But it feels like there's a good blend in that coaching setup. Everyone knows and it's just starting in the last few weeks to pay dividends against sides that just beat us up. That, they physically, how many times have we just gone, we should beat this Ospreys team, and we just get arm wrestled out of it and, draw or lose. And you just kind of like, well, that was just the fight's there. So I think, yeah, definitely Van Ziel deserves credit for what he's done. But I think as a team, they've set the foundations, and I think they need now to go on for another season to actually deliver on it. South Africa is going to be really interesting. That's the test, isn't it? To go out there, because we're going to have 2 physical games to finish the season with, and that'll be a real litmus test for how far we've come, I think.
I liked Jockey comparing himself to Dave Bassett, England manager, when he went down on the touchline at the end, and the cameras following him and his celebration onto the pitch. It didn't strike me as the celebration of somebody who is leaving imminently, and I certainly hope that if we get into the top 8, obviously what comes with that is a Champions Cup qualification, and although we had that last year, him having earned that himself, he might want to stick around to have a proper dig at that with his own squad then as well.
It would be another year, another coach getting to the end of like a 2-year period, leaving as well. So I think Young was 2 or 3 years. Mulvihill was 2 or 3 years, but was through COVID. Wilson left just as he got a squad together that he was happy with. It just seems like it's another. If he was to leave, it would be another unfulfilled potential and journey, like an unfinished journey of a head coach.
Yeah, another what if to add to the many
Yeah.
piles we have at Cardiff Rugby at the moment. Andrew, moving on to player wise, Charlie on Twitter asked after recent performances, is Millard's future at 13? Which is a weird question because obviously he came through at 13, so his future at one point was 13. I think it was February 2021, we lost 32-17 at Connacht, his last start at 13 before starting there against Benetton a couple of weeks ago. Uh, I was certainly at the time hopeful that we'd never see him play at 13 again after those couple of performances. He's gone onto the wing, but slotted back in there, and he was very good there on Friday night. Defense and a couple of nice defensive reads. Is he a genuine 13 option now for Cardiff going forward?
Yeah, I think so going forward. We're really lacking depth there, and it's obviously a question what's going to happen with Ray next year. If he stays on, that's brilliant, but we can't keep relying on him at 13. But yeah, I thought Millard was really good on Friday. I thought in the first half there were elements of his defence that was kind of he was defending like a winger, but he very much improved in the second half. And yeah, some of the reads he was making were perfect. I think stuff like that try he scored against that try he scored in the first half or on the back of the Faletau break. Like he's genuinely trying to run kind of the winger line because he's in midfield. It means he's in the perfect place for that. So you get the double whammy there of you've got a winger's mind playing at 13 when it comes to attack, and it's particularly a good threat if we're going forward to South Africa. Him starting at 13 could be a good shout, but obviously it's a case of what's the weather going to be like down there. And I think, yeah, going forwards in terms of 13, we've got the same thing with Mason Grady, that he's a bit of a winger / 13 at the moment. So we've got a bit of issues there in terms of solving, but it'd be nice next season, regardless of what happens with Ray, to get like a solid 13 option in. But yeah, I think going forward, Miller's definitely an option for 13.
Does it help? Do you think it helps our attack that we've got Adams on the wing who has played a little bit of 13? We've got Grady, as you said, who's a wing stroke 13. Millard is a wing stroke 13. Hamer Webb is a big lad who looks like he could have played 13, but is obviously a winger. Like we've got 4 players of quite a similar sort of stature that could interchange into that. Just something Andrew was saying then, my brain went, oh yeah, maybe it's part of the structure because of the line that he ran for the Faletau one.
I think at 13, I think next season's a big season for Mason in terms of, if he's going to be a 13 at international level as well, he's got to be playing that position because, it's your spot blitzing, your defensive captain. Ray's been there for so long, and we've seen him do it so many times where he's either turning the ball over or spot blitzing or leading the defensive line. You can't. I don't think you can play wing for your club and then come in and play 13 for your country, if that makes sense. Or you can probably do it the other way round because there's probably less to learn. So I think if his future is in that centre spot, he needs to have that next season. He needs to be like, you are coming in as our 13. I think I read somewhere, I don't know whether it was the Daily Mail article, that we've already missed out on a 13 that we had our sights set on. I don't know who that was, but obviously they would look for somebody in that position. I mean, Millar's the top try scorer in the league, isn't he, with the Glasgow hooker, which is incredible considering he didn't have a contract at the start of the season. He's a great, I was going to say utility player, but I think that is unfair to him. I think he's a very good winger, and I think he can do a job at 13. But I think we've got some decisions to make around Mason Grady next season.
It's interesting with Millard that maybe there's a blueprint there for how you develop 13s now. In a similar way to we talk about props don't fully go in until they're like 25, 26. 13 has become such a difficult position to play defensively, like picking up those reads, especially when I think it's even harder probably for Welsh teams where, we are generally on the back foot and we're not coming forward and reading stuff in front of us often, that maybe there's a sort of a future now where actually players come through as wingers and play as wingers until they're 24, 25, and they've seen the game from out there, and then they start to move inside more rather than sort of overexposing them for young, because not because of internally necessarily, but externally, we're very quick to jump on young players. We do it with props a lot of, if, when Dylan Lewis, for example, was coming into the Wales team at 23, 24 and is immediately written off as a poor scrummaging prop. And it's like, well, he's only 23, 24, give him a chance to develop. Mason Grady, I think he was against England last year. He got the yellow card where he's flown up and knocked the ball down. He's dreadful at defending. Looks like 21, 20, give him a chance. So maybe spending a bit more time on the wing now and then slowly transitioning inside is the future. The tricky thing then is actually transitioning them inside, because you could end up sort of like an Owen. We spent 3 or 4 years waiting for that transition inside, and then it just never develops, and he stayed as a winger forever. But yeah, I agree with the principle that at some point you have to put them into midfield and stick with them for a bit. You can't just leave them on the wing forever and hope that they'll just randomly pick up 13 if there's an injury crisis and they get thrown in there.
Yeah, and I don't think Harry. I think we're all concerned about that centre combination, just in terms of it, size and experience, and that, and Ray's been such a mainstay of that, leading that defensive line. He hasn't really put a foot wrong. Maybe a few misreads, maybe not quite being in the position that we want, but added that, as Andrew said, he's scored the tries this season. So it's not like it hasn't been a disaster at all, and I think he's shown he can do it. I think it's just for next season, what are we gonna do? And you've got to give people time in that position. And I really like Grady off the wing. I like him coming into midfield, but I think our wings have evolved in his absence. We're now stacked in that position, and actually there's a really good balance between the wings that we've got currently. And you can see actually Grady not maybe quite fitting that mould on the wing, because he's okay under the high ball of competing on it, but it's not his strong suit. We've kind of evolved that game. So it may well be that there's that's the plan. I mean, he's got to get himself fit first, and I hope he has a good rehabilitation over the summer, comes back strong, because he's a box office player.
Absolutely. And talking of box office players, nice segue there. Tony Toulouse has said he was embarrassed to win the Player of the Match award on the night. I assume it's just embarrassed because he's just embarrassed about being so much better than everybody else at rugby whenever he plays. The question, I suppose, off the back of it, because I mean, we could talk about how good he is or whatever. I think we all know he's quite good at rugby, but is he a genuine Lions contender? Squad named on the 8th of May, I think. There's some good 8 prospects there, but not many with his level of experience, certainly. And when he's on it, and he has been on it the last few weeks, there's still not many better players even at his age.
I think he goes, but I don't think he goes in the initial squad. I think he's someone that gets called up after an injury or something. Because he's the sort of player you can drop into the squads at short notice and you know what you're going to get from him, as he's done countless times before. But us not being in knockout rugby this weekend ahead of the squad you said was announced on Thursday means that he's not going to have that opportunity to make that one last proper big shout, I think. And while he's played really well the last 2 weeks, this week off might just be the one that knocks him out. That's my brain.
That's fair. It's going to be I don't ever want to spend too long on Lions selection, because you could literally go around in circles for ages going sort of different countries. But I think it's a lot of it is just me hoping that Cardiff continue to have at least somebody on the tour, because it's quite a good record. Andrew, my last question related to Friday night, and as somebody who's has been around a lot of grounds in the last couple of years, following Cardiff and Wales. Just how good was the Arms Park on Friday, and sort of where does it rate in relation to other grounds you've been to when it's like that full and rocking, getting behind the team?
Oh, it was, excuse me, it was unbelievable. I was thinking earlier, in terms of the context of the game, Like, it's only the kind of Anglo-Welsh European games or the derbies that have had kind of that feeling there. That was 11,000, wasn't it? That was a massive kind of atmosphere, and you could see it from the players how they were getting quite hyped from crowd interaction. There was one point where Hamer Webb was near us and he was encouraging us to get louder. And I've seen their Instagram posts after, and they were so grateful for kind of the support that was there. It was huge. I say, obviously, I've been to plenty of grounds, but often tend to go during the kind of games that we lose, so I don't have as much of a positive view on it. But like, yeah, if you ever get a chance to go to like Ulster away, that's a great atmosphere around there, and that's pretty much the only one that I could compare to. But again, that was a game we got smashed in, so don't have the most positive view of that.
I think as well, to be fair, like Ulster, Munster did bring fans as well, which I think makes a difference to the atmosphere. There were quite a few there, like Ulster earlier in the season. There were quite a few there as well, and I think it just, brings out that rivalry element of it when you hear the chants for the opposition go up. And yeah, playing Zombie at the end was a lovely touch as well. Absolutely loved that.
Yeah, shout out Rob on that one. That was you can just picture Rob grinning whenever he does stuff like that, isn't it? Just like chuckling to himself about it.
I still think back to the time he played Puff the Magic Dragon for when the Dragons ran out, and there was the Birdie song for the Ospreys, and what did he play for the Scarlets? I can't remember. It was something else, but yeah, those just made me laugh. They were a long time ago, though. I keep realizing how old I am whenever I talk.
So that's what the pod's for, just to remind everybody of their age. So after Friday, then Cardiff sit 5th in the URC on 46 points. It's still incredibly tight in the race for the playoffs. So ahead of us are the Sharks on 53. And I'm not being too pessimistic and sort of ruling out our chances of potentially catching up with them. But looking behind us, the Stormers are 6th on 45. The Scarlets are 7th on 43. Benetton are 8th on 41, as a Munster 9th also on 41, and then Edinburgh 10th on 39, and Ospreys and Ulster 11th and 12th both on 38. So in terms of sort of different results that could go either way over the next few weeks, I can't be bothered to look at it, to be honest. There's so many teams playing each other, I cannot figure out what we do or don't need. Cardiff's have a week off this weekend, as we mentioned. It's European semi-final action, and then it's a trip to South Africa the following week. So we played the Bulls, who are 3rd on the first weekend, and then the Stormers, who are 6th on the second weekend. Obviously, in terms of keeping it in our hands, a win would be great, but I think the minimum we're probably looking for is 2 points from those two games, and then hoping that results should go our way elsewhere. Simon, when looking ahead to that South Africa tour, it's quite a difficult question to answer, really, but how do we approach it? Do we go balls to the wall, full out, try and win both games, or do we try and sort of target one or the other, or do we just say, look, it's been a great season so far, let's send some kids out and see how it goes?
Yeah, well, I mean, what do we know? Last time we said go all out for it, and we ended up with all the changes from the Benetton game, but almost won it. I think I know we were kind of on the WhatsApp group trying to work out connotations for what's needed where. I think, Munster have got Ulster at home and Benetton at home. It feels like, Munster could finish off both of those teams' chances, really. I think the Ulster's after Benetton, I can't remember, but you're right, Dan. You can't work it out. There's too much going on. There's too many moving parts, and all the all the Welsh sides are in South Africa as well. So, my view would be, you've got this far. To be 5th is incredible. It is just, everything the club's gone through this season. The financial, not only our own financial situation, but the general kind of financial situation of Welsh rugby. For two Welsh sides going into the last 2 rounds to sit with potential, to sit within the top 8 and have a potential chance to qualify, and the Ospreys still having an outside chance, but incredible stuff. You know, when you look at the Irish sides are fighting alongside us, you know, in terms of Connacht are probably out of it, probably, but, you know, are still mathematically in. But Ulster and Munster are fighting for the same spots that Cardiff, the Scarlets and the Ospreys are. You know, it's credit to those, to our professional setup, that we're in this position. So I would go for it. I think you've got to go for it. I think, can't remember who we're playing first.
Bulls away at altitude.
And Bulls is at altitude. We've got a week off. That's going to be an incredibly hard game. You know, I can't see how we get anything from the Bulls away. But then, you know, you come back down. I think you've got to go for it. You know, we showed out in Leinster where we don't get anything ever out in Leinster. We got a bonus point for a try scored. Yeah, we got well beaten, but at the end of the day, turn around and go, they're top of the league. We're at their place. We got a point. So I think you've just got to go out to try to score tries. So yeah, I think you go for it. I think it will be really nice if this is Talupe's, you know, kind of final song with the side, to have him out in South Africa for periods for both games. Whether you manage that differently in terms of how much time he plays, and maybe Big Al against the Bulls and then Talupe against the Sharks. But it just showed on Friday how important he is to the team. You know, he's just, you know, as Tony said, it's just a top quality operator. So yeah, I'd go for it. To be honest, I'd go for it in both games. I don't think we can pick the same team in both games because of the turnaround and because of altitude and travel and all of that. But we should have learned our lesson when we didn't go for it in Europe and you know, took our destiny out of our own hands with games that everyone said on the pod we could have won those. I mean, I would still take some of the younger players out there as, you know, an extended squad if we can afford it. You know, I don't know whether all the Welsh sides are travelling together on a big plane. But
WRU own now. We're all business class.
Yeah. Just us though, right, Tony? Just us.
Just us.
Just pull the curtain across.
The rest are in a little cabin that have been dragged behind our plane.
But I would still take those players out there because I think for your Stefan Manuel, for your Tom Bowen, it's a good experience. And, you know, we want them close around the squad next year. But yeah, go for it. Nothing to lose.
From a purely selfish perspective, I don't want Bowen and Stefan Manuel going to South Africa. Thank you very much.
That's a Rags man there.
I want him there on Saturday to give Regenda a good beating. Same with Big Mac.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough.
I understand it's a 32-man squad that Cardiff will take to South Africa, which does allow wiggle room for some extras in terms of, you know, I think we've probably...
Have we got 32 players to take?
Well, yeah, I think we're probably somewhere around 26, 27 over the last few weeks that have been sort of used semi-regularly. So there's a couple of extra spaces there. Ben on Twitter did ask about, his question was, does Bowen stay with the Rags or go to South Africa? And do we wait for Saturday? Does that sort of the outcome of Saturday depend on what he does? I think it'd probably be too late by then, because I imagine we've probably had to tell somebody who's going to be getting on the plane at some point, and that's changing it after Saturday afternoon, depending on the Rags results, is a bit late. But there's an interesting debate about Tony, about whether, you know, from our Rags watching point of view, we'd like to see them there. But what is a better development opportunity? Go into South Africa with the first team, or play in proper playoff knockout rugby in the Super Rugby Cymru?
The SRC was meant to be to give those younger lads experience in knockout rugby, but essentially the two games in South Africa are knockout rugby as well, I guess. From a purely selfish perspective, it would be really nice to be the first name on that SRC trophy. We've won the league, go win the playoff. And to do that, we're going to need the players like Stefan Manuel, Bowen, especially if Derry Cross's injury is keeping him out. So it's a really interesting balancing act. I wonder if, with the rumours of Big Mac moving around whether that's agent talk of he wants to be playing, and as a settler, we've said, look, come to South Africa and you'll get some game time out there. But who knows? I personally, I want to win a trophy, but I understand that. Yeah, who knows?
It'd be interesting to see if they actually announce the 32-man squad as well, who's gone out, because I think that would be quite good. I think people would be interested in that, so hopefully they do properly announce a travelling party. Andrew, in terms of sort of looking ahead to next season as well and what might happen the next few weeks, do Cardiff need the playoffs and the Champions Cup, or is there a sort of argument that says actually, like, with the squad's not going to improve dramatically next season, there's a slight uplift in budget, but we're still not going to be wandering around sort of saying bring on Toulouse, we'll have them and we'll make it to the final of the Champions Cup. Is staying in the Challenge Cup, having that sort of squad rotation opportunity to build and then getting into the Champions Cup the following year maybe a sort of a long-term option, or is the pull of the Champions Cup and the sort of commercial opportunities and the Anglo-Welsh fixtures just too good to turn down for the club?
Yeah, it's a difficult one because I see arguments on both sides, but like I feel like getting this far and like the position we are in the league now, I'd be so gutted if we didn't make the playoffs. And yeah, I think we could still. Is this something like if we finish ninth but above Edinburgh, or not even above Edinburgh? If Edinburgh win the Challenge Cup, which is very unlikely, then there's some way that we can make the Champions Cup. Don't hold me to that, but essentially, yeah, I feel getting this far and the position we're in, I'd be devastated because I'm fully hoping I can go to like an away day for the playoffs and inevitably get smashed by Leinster, but it'd be good fun.
Glasgow's a really good night out as well.
Yeah. I haven't been to Glasgow since I've been able to drink, so that would be a good experience. But yeah, at this point, I'd very much want us to just give it a go and go for it. Try and get that playoff spot. And I'm not expecting us to win the league by any means, but kind of putting the players in that position. And as much as we've got a few players leaving at the end of the season, there's still that kind of tight core group of players that are still going to be around next season. So it's a good kind of thing that there's a lot of players who've never really played in kind of big matches with kind of that. You don't have many from the kind of class of 2018 that won the Challenge Cup, and kind of putting them in that position would be hugely beneficial going next season. And yeah, if it means playing the Champions Cup again, I don't expect us to top our pool. It'd be such a good experience to play in some of those games, and it wouldn't be like the dead rubbers we've had at times in the Challenge Cup home games where only like 4,000 people turn up to get a full gate and a proper atmosphere going.
I mean, it would be remarkable. Again, I'm saying that a lot, but if one Irish side, one Scottish side, one Italian, and two Welsh sides qualify for the Champions Cup, it's real through the looking glass stuff here. And it's. I mean, it's a long, long way to go. Only 2 games, but if that is where the season ends, it would just be ridiculous in a sense when you look at how it all pans out. But to be in this fight is incredible. I agree, Andrew. I think if it comes along, the commercial opportunities are too good to turn down. You just go out there, you give it your best shot. Hopefully, whatever happens, we'll end up playing Connacht in the group stages, so it doesn't really matter. Does it? And you get the food and the bar tills ringing, and that helps. And at the very least, everybody, hopefully we get a good draw so that we can draw that in, because that's what you want, really. You want the good home games because we're not going to win the thing. But it changes perceptions as well of players that we can do this. And, it is a very Cardiff thing, isn't it? We get ourselves into these positions and then wobble our way out of these positions, unfortunately. So, I'm not where we are. Has been brilliant. This season's definitely been a step forward. I think maybe at Christmas, we're all a bit like, have we made progress? You could see progress, but actually to be 5th going into 2 games, you can hand on heart say, yeah, we progressed this season. So anything's a bonus, really.
The second half of the year has been much more difficult than the first half of the year is, and we've excelled in the second half of the year. That shows the determination that squad have got through everything that they went through last year, all those losing bonus points, and the buying in they've done. For them to fall at this hurdle, I genuinely can't see it happening. I think we go there. I think we win the first game, and then we can just rest on our laurel a little bit in the second. I feel it's a learning of like we've talked about with the Benetton game, with the Challenge Cup games where we've slightly gone a bit weaker to try and mitigate it out. But I think we go fully loaded, win the first game, don't worry about it. Jobs are good and have a relax on the beach. Done. The hope that kills you.
Heard it here first. We'll park that there for a second. The only thing I would say is that you will know who Cardiff have got away in the playoffs if we do make it by how many YouTube videos the Andrew Ford YouTube channel is putting out. Because if it is Bulls away, there's gonna be 10 videos a day trying to hike up that advertising avenue so you can get to South Africa for that weekend.
I got no comment on that.
Well, that's it for the first team on-field action for this week. Just a quick stop with the Rags. We've mentioned it a bit, but obviously the Super Rugby Cymru playoffs start this weekend. The Rags are playing Bridgend Saturday afternoon, 2:30 at the Arms Park. It's an all-pay fixture, so if you're a season ticket holder, there is a bit of a discount there until, I think, the early birds until Thursday evening now. Bridgend, who beat Swansea just about last week to make it this far. We've beaten them twice in the league this season, 47-14 at the Arms Park in October, 14-29 at the Brewery Field just a couple of weeks ago, a full 12 points out of 12 from them. Tony?
They have shown a lot of grit. So Bridgend have shown a lot of grit in the last 2 weeks to get through Llandovery, who have looked exceptional the last period of the league, and then I thought they'd thrown the game against Swansea away. So to come back and win it as they did it was such a surprising result. They have loads of ex-Cardiff lads, so it's always good when we beat them. I love seeing Ed Howley play. So if you're thinking about going down, it's worth going down because Ed Howley is worth 10 quid, 12 quid, depending on whether you're a season ticket holder or not. And you buy before the 1st of March. Kids under so juniors are free, but you have to get tickets for them, by the way. I found that out from the club. It comes back to the point we were talking about earlier about what sort of side the Cardiff put out. I really want to see Steph Emmanuel, Tom Bowen, Matty Young, and Big Mac get game time because they deserve it. They've played so well throughout this season for the Rags. It's now a time to get them over the line. Interestingly, a team of the season was posted on during the Bridgend Swansea game on the S4C. And it contained 2 Cardiff players. One was Dewi Cross and one was Sean Moore, both of which were deserving, but there was no under-20s players in that team of the season. So I really hope that team of the season has been pinned up and given to some of our younger lads and gone, go out, show them that they're wrong, and show them that you deserve to be in that side. Because a couple of times, like I said earlier, we need for us to be the first name on that new SRC trophy would be fantastic. Because in all humbleness, we're the reason this has been condensed. The work that Cardiff have been doing with the academy in the last few years, with the way that we've been bringing players through it, through the Rags, is the reason that the league have now condensed down into doing this from a more prominent position, or that's how I believe it. and seeing, and we'll only see the benefits out of the back of that. So as a Cardiff man, I feel I want us to be the first name on it. Yeah. I don't know. Andrew, you go down quite a bit, and Simon, you go to the Rags a little bit, don't you? No.
Yeah.
It's such a good day out. What are your thoughts? Dan, you're back.
Yeah, sorry.
What are your thoughts?
I don't know how much of this I'll ask Lee to like edit it a bit, but having Tony on mute earlier, and then I've updated mid pod, and so it's just closed my Zoom on me, and now I'm back. But yeah, listen, the Rags is. I do think people should come out a bit more to the Rags if anyone's got the seat. Or you don't have to have a season ticket this weekend; just need a tenner. But it is such a.
£12.
It is. I reckon it's a tenner for adults, isn't it? The early bird one.
It's 12 for non-season ticket holders. It's £10 for season ticket holders. They've updated the pricing.
But yeah, the game is just really enjoyable. There's less kicking. Yeah. There's less like stoppages around set pieces and stuff. It moves a bit quicker. Obviously, you get to see a lot of really good young talent as well from Cardiff and from other sides as they come and bring academy players from the Ospreys this weekend, and we've seen quite a couple of good lads from the Scarlets last week as well. So yeah, it's a game that I think Cardiff are very much favourites for, but going into it as the team at the top of the league and will have home advantage throughout the playoffs. There's a big target on the back now as well, and we've seen a couple of times Cardiff make it this far and just sort of fall at the final hurdle as other teams finish with a bit more momentum. Cardiff did lose the last 2 games of the regular season, so it'd be interesting to see how they go. Just one other piece of pathway news this week as well. I noticed Cody Stone is going to be leaving the academy this summer. He signed for Merthyr for next season. They announced him as a new sign-in a couple of weeks ago. I suspect he'll still be quite closely tracked as he plays for the Ironmen in the Premiership over the next year or two. But obviously, a lot of exciting young talent coming out of this season under 18s as well. So not room for everybody next season. Just keep an eye on his progress. At this point of the pod, then, just to say, if you are listening on podcast platform, do feel free to like and subscribe to our podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, then subscribe to the Wrap channel. Loads of other podcasts out there, the URC Rewind, recapping all of the action, looking ahead to European games this weekend, all the individual club ones, the SRC guys as we get into the playoffs, and I'm sure the women's, I think they call themselves the Women's Rugby Treehouse as they discuss all things women's rugby. They'll be looking back over the Women's Six Nations campaign that was. News then from the last week. First one, I won't do too many comments on this because I think they're all pretty straightforward. Josh McNally signs a new contract. If anybody thinks that's a bad idea, give your head a wobble. I mean, he's been great. Nice comments from him as well that he was sort of considering giving it up at the end of last season, then got this opportunity, and it's sort of reinvigorated his love for the game. The only sort of downside to him, of course, is that he misses a couple of games, and I do think he might miss the Stormers game. The RAF are playing the Army that weekend, having missed Judgment Day to where they played the Navy. But it'd be interesting to see how that works, because obviously he will already be out in South Africa the week before, and I'm not sure if we're paying for him to get back. Although it does strike me as the RAF could fly him back, because that's something that they might be able to do. If flying him back is an issue for them, I worry about the RAF as a whole.
See, I was going to go, can we go the Jason Tubby route and just have a dog taped to his passport the night before? But I guess he wouldn't need one, would he?
Well, he might need one to get back, so we just have to leave him stranded in South Africa in the embassy or something.
No, don't. The team have been there before. No, let's not go back. I know the pod is retro now, but let's not go back there.
The other, I've been told that this is not like an announced thing, but that Big Mac is definitely staying after the new linking him to the Dragons the other week. He's got a year to go on his contract. I think the club are not keen to release him from said contract, and hopefully he'll be either getting minutes in South Africa or certainly next season. And then the other piece of news that came out this week, I think it was Ben James in Wales Online saying that Cardiff are set to sign Dragons second row George Knott, 29-year-old Welsh qualified player, has been at the Dragons a couple of years. Primarily a second row, can operate at 6 as well, has been a bit injured this year. I think Jamie on the Dragons pod mentioned that he'd had concussion and knee problems. Fordy, I don't know how much you've seen of George Knott. Seems like a solid enough player, but probably not. I think we'd be hoping for a bit more in the second row as well as him.
Yeah, I think you summed it up perfectly on Twitter with your tweet saying, in terms of depth, it's not a bad signing. But yeah, if that's the only second row we get in, then there's a cause of worry, and it's kind of what we're so used to over the last few years, that we've just signed kind of the second or third choice second row from other regions that don't really kind of offer much grunt. And he's a 4-6 hybrid as well, so it's kind of, we've got plenty of players like that. I don't think we need more. I've watched him a bit, and I don't think he's a bad player by any means, but yeah, it just wouldn't be the most uplifting of signings if that's the only second row we sign.
Absolutely. Just to finish the podcast this week, then we're going to head into our sort of squad building stuff. Next week on the pod, we'll get out the spreadsheet and have a look at the positions one by one, and who is contracted, is leaving, and we don't know about yet. But just to go over some of the departures as they've been reported, and some that we're expecting, and whether we think it's something that we can deal with, or whether they're players that we'd like to re-sign if they haven't actually left yet. Starting with a departure that was announced this week, Reece Litterick has signed for Edinburgh. I think it was first reported by Steph Thomas like way back in November or something. So I don't quite understand the timelines around when stuff gets announced, if everybody's known about it for 6 months and they've just gone, oh, actually, we'll just announce it on a Tuesday, is it? But Tony, like, we've said how good the front row has been and how good the scrummaging has been. This feels like a bit of a loss for Cardiff and for Welsh rugby generally.
Yeah, props like him don't grow on trees. It feels like the sort of player you could have chucked into a Wales squad and got him captured and maybe encouraged him to stay in Wales a bit. But it definitely feels, but that would be purely from a Cardiff selfishness point of view again, which I do a lot, to be honest. Yeah, like he's been superb. Definitely one of our more prominent signings in the front row recently, especially with Ed Byrne being injured lately. They are the same position, aren't they?
No, opposite sides.
No, opposite sides.
There's Will Davis King, who's
They're all just big lads to me.
I don't think there's actually a selfish thing. I think there is a Welsh rugby angle there, that like we don't have tight end depth in this country either. Like, I see case in point, Will Davis King, Will Griff John reappearing for the Six Nations. Like, yeah, he had one really good game, like, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't followed up by anything in particular, and he's not a long-term option there. If you look around the other regions, there's a lot of overseas players at tight end, and there's a lot of older players. Somebody like Tom Botha, for example, he's not going to be troubling test caps any. He probably should have been a few years ago, but isn't now. Players like Sam Wainwright hasn't really kicked on at the Scarlets. Chris Coleman at the Dragons, he's still quite young, but he's not immediately showing signs of being a test level player. I don't think Litterick is currently a test level player, but he was latecomer to the pro game. He's only been in it 2 or 3 years, and he's noticeably improved as a player for Cardiff this season, let alone from when he signed at the start of last season. He's only 25, 26, I think. There's definitely a case there to say in 2 years he would be a test level player if he continued with his progression. And it does feel like Welsh rugby have missed out on an opportunity to just bolster that national pool at tight head, really, because it is very, very, very shallow. Andrew, another player who has been linked away this week, Evan Daniel, is linked with a move to the Ospreys. This one's probably a mix of emotions there, in that it's maybe understandable, but also like annoying at the same time to lose a talented young player.
Yeah, definitely. I've been really impressed with him when he plays. He's got kind of that hard edge that we really lack at Cardiff at times. And yeah, I was really hoping he'd come through, but it's kind of a no-brainer from his perspective, because I think Evan Lloyd's really come through quite well this season. So that puts him third or fourth choice. And I imagine someone like Dav Hughes is kind of, he's already signed a new contract, but he's kind of happy to fill in when needed. That when you have someone of Evan Daniel's age, it's a no-brainer that if he goes elsewhere And you got the situation of the Ospreys of Derry Lake's only signed a 1-year contract. So in 2 seasons, he could well be pushing for a starting spot with Sam Parry getting on. So gutting to lose him because he's got that edge about him. But yeah, no brainer really from his perspective.
Just too good at producing young players. That's the Cardiff problem. This is what it's like being the new Leinster. It's just awful. Simon, another player then who's been linked with a move west, a bit further west this one. Ellis Bevan potentially heading to the Scarlets this summer. That I'm not too sure what to make of that one. He obviously hasn't had much minutes at all this season. He's played probably almost as much for the national team in the last 12 months as he had for Cardiff in a comparative level. Is that one where maybe he just needs a fresh scene to kick on? And obviously we've got Johan Mulder now, so that the sort of time is going to be limited that he gets here.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's been quite surprising at times that he hasn't got the minutes. But also, I think that's credit to Mulder, who started off really shaky. Well, started off looking quite good in pre-season, and then had that cameo in one of the first games that was just like kicking the ball dead, and it just all went wrong. And you just thought, "Oh, hang on, what's this?" But has taken that 9 jersey, and now is the first choice basically. So part of it is down to that. I'm sure Bevan, in terms of his Welsh chances, wants to be playing week in, week out. We've got 3 scrum halves. If he's away with Wales as well, he's not kind of getting that time in terms of rotation. So again, it's like the other players we've talked of, really. We can't fit him in the squad. So he's gone to look for something else, which, is I think he's got a lot of potential. And with the Scarlets, as long as he doesn't fulfill that against Cardiff, I wish him all the best. But I think like all we've said about all 3, really, it's one of those where you kind of go, oh, if we could have kept him, it would have been useful, but he would probably stagnate a bit. So it's probably the right time for Welsh rugby for him to go and, whether Gareth Davis has got another year in him, has he? I don't know what the contract situation is down there. But again, it's one of those where I think they've only got a young scrum half behind him or something like that. They've got a few youngsters, so he'd be going down there expecting to play as well.
Yeah, Gareth Davis will be 35 at the start of next season. So yeah, I think he probably got another year or 2 in him, but certainly he can't be playing every minute of every game as he seems to have been for the Scarlets recently. And yeah, they've got Archie Hughes, but I think he's had quite a nasty injury and probably hasn't developed as well. Just on Bevan, I wonder if there's a bit of a learning point just to keep in mind for Cardiff going forward, that like it is a difficult one in the sense that Thomas Williams was superb. Like, it was very difficult to ever not start him or take him off in any games. But I don't think there's any doubt that the sort of knock-on consequence of that was that Bevan didn't get the minutes he needed, sort of 20, 21, 22 around there. I think he's up about 23, 24 now. And he suddenly then got thrust into the starter role when Thomas left without any sort of build up to that at all. So it's always a tricky balance in that between trying to win games, having your best player on the field at all times versus giving that, having that succession plan in place. But I think that, you look at some positions, 13, like we mentioned earlier, and the amount of minutes that Ray Lilo has played. You look at maybe somewhere like fly half with Harry Wild coming through, but Callum Sheedy playing a lot of minutes, and Lucas de la Rua in the back row as well. Obviously, we've got a lot of very good back rowers, but yeah, there always has to be an eye on succession to make sure that we're not then left in the lurch when the incumbent players are moving on.
I think as well with that point, Dan, and it might be why it's taken a little while this season to get things to click, is that we played off Thomas a lot. He was the one that made things happen, whether it was, running flat, whether it was little chips, whether it was sniping around the edges. It was almost like, the French play off 9. We were playing off, and Bevan is a very different player to Thomas Williams. You weren't bringing on somebody who could have that continuity, and that's good and fine. And you want somebody to tighten the game up. So I think as well, maybe there's an element there where he maybe didn't quite fit the game plan that we were playing and now we're adapting that game plan and kind of been caught, as you say, between those two, those two styles, and not really owning either of them from himself, because he hasn't had the minutes to really command, that position. So I think you make a really good point, but I think it's wider around who have we got coming through and how do we match the styles, or this is what we want you to do, the role we want you to play. Alec Davis is quite clear. The role we want him to play is to tactically kick as much as possible to compete, but that's the game plan we are now playing. We weren't playing that with Thomas Williams at 9. We were much open, more free with De Beer at 10 as well. So yeah, I think that Cardiff need to think a bit more strategically, I think, about some of those players and where we want them to be, and what Jockey said early on, he knows what a Cardiff player looks like, and that's really promising, and that's why we need to keep him, because another coach will come in and have a different view of what a Cardiff player would look like.
Absolutely, and just on scrum half, I'm reliably informed that we will have a replacement for Bevan in for next season, and it'll be a bit of a sort of a stopgap until hopefully Sean Davis makes it through into the first team, who will likely be the under-20s starting scrum half next season. So I put together a little list and sent it onto our group. We've mentioned Litterick, and then there's obviously Thomas Young, who are definitely departing. Then we've mentioned Evan Daniel and Ellis Bevan. Alongside then there's Seb Davis, Talupi Faletau and Tinas De Beer, who we're expecting to depart at some point in the next few weeks to get those announcements. And then there's a couple of possible departures, players who are either out of contract or have been rumoured elsewhere but not strongly. To run through them is Will Davis-King, Gwilym Bradley, Rory Jennings, Gabe Hamer-Webb, Regan Grace, Ed Byrne and Ben Donnell. Tony, I don't know if any of those players jump out as players who we should definitely be keeping a hold of.
It would be really disappointing to lose Hamer-Webb after the run he's been on recently. He played well in that little loan spell he had, and then he went to Northampton, I think it was, and didn't really, maybe played one game or two and didn't really get game time. But he seems he's the sort of player that we talked about him before. He's the sort of player where you always get at least a 6 or a 7 out of 10 out of him. And if I'm a coach, I want a team of players that I know that are consistent and I know what I'm going to get from them. And I feel like he always looks like he's doing everything he can to make every little bit of difference and every little bit of his ability make a difference on the pitch. And as a supporter, that's exactly what I want from my players as well. I love watching him play. Also, he's a handsome man, as Dan will continually tell us. So yeah, it would be really disappointing to see him go in. Will Davis-King would be, I don't know, he doesn't seem to have ever kicked on, but maybe that comes back to the conversation we've been having about props and maybe maturing at a slower rate. Yeah.
Yeah, I having said that earlier about like not writing people off too early, he is like up to 28 or something now, I think.
Oh, is he that old?
Yeah.
I keep thinking he's younger than that.
He was a latecomer because he didn't do the academy route. I think he went sort of, I think he got picked up at Cardiff Met and then played a bit for Ponty and the Rags and then got into the pro game that way. So yeah, it does seem like he should, in terms of actual rugby age, he's maybe a bit younger, but in terms of his actual age, he is up at 28 now. Andrew, a player that I'm sort of in two minds, like my heart says to keep him, but my head says, I don't know, he's been injured a lot. Gwilym Bradley, like, how many sort of more chances do we give him to get fit and show the potential that he undoubtedly has, but just has not been able to get on the field at all yet?
Yeah, I remember, was it Leinster away that he came in during the COVID season, just had a worldy performance, but he's just had such horrible luck with injuries kind of since then. Yeah, I'm very much in two minds about that. Like, he's good in terms of depth, and those games he played during that COVID season, he was solid, kind of fit in the Cardiff mold perfectly. But yeah, with the injuries, it's just a case of I don't know how long he can go on for, and kind of hoping that something will come about. Cause I'm not sure how old he is now, but again, it's a sort of thing. Yeah, I wouldn't be too disappointed if he left. Wouldn't mind if he put a glowing review in for his younger brother to possibly come over to Cardiff, though.
Yeah, he'd be 25 at the start of next season,
Wow.
William Bradley. So yeah, he's getting to the definitely at the make or break point now of whether he continue. Simon, a couple of players on that list, non-Welsh qualified. Rory Jennings, has been linked with Worcester. Ben Donnell as well, who I believe is out of contract. Like, how much do we balance keeping hold of players who have been good for the squad versus the need to sort of properly target where we're getting these non-Welsh qualified players in certain positions?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jennings would be the one that, again, never really done anything wrong. You know, has come in certain game, came on late against the Ospreys, didn't he? Kind of steady things a bit as well. But I think we've talked about it before. It's that non-qualified place. You know, do we need that with Stefan Manuel coming through at 12? We could probably do with it somewhere else. We are short. It feels a bit light in the centres anyway. So yeah, Donnell, I would keep. I think his versatility. He's one of those second row back rows that when he's in the second row, you always think, oh, we're going to be hammered at the scrum or at the line out, but actually he seems to, not be found out in that second row position, which isn't the same for every kind of 6-4 combination or 6-5 combination I think he gives them ability. He's a good blind side of doing the hard work, not the flashy work, and I think that is important. And if we want to play a more, if we want to run a pack around as well, having him in the second row, and if he can hold up the scrum as he did, he started against the Ospreys, didn't he, in that second row? The scrum wasn't a problem, the line-out wasn't a problem, and he's more mobile. So against bigger locks, you're kind of moving him around. So I'd look to keep him. I think he's a good option. We're light in the second row a bit anyway. I don't know what's happening with Thornton. Is his contract up?
Yes, I think it is, but I think he's signed on for another year. Okay. Just not announced yet. But yeah, I expect him to be there next year. But
I think if you keep Donnell, I think Bradley would want to go. If you're 25 and you've got those players in front of you, Basham, Al Lawrence, Mackenzie Martin, Botham, Donnell, you're going to get some game time, but probably not enough to kick on. So you would kind of not blame him again to go, actually, I'm 25, I need to find a new challenge. It's just getting a bit stale here. So yeah, but I agree with Gabe. I think it feels like he was a bit in the wilderness, and it feels like we've given him a chance, and it's reignited something in him, and for him. And I think it would be a shame if he then went, because I think I would be surprised if we're not offering him something, put it that way. But I guess it'll be whether the money's better elsewhere or what else is on the table. But it's also that that Welsh cap thing. Is there an opportunity? And I think we were talking about missing out on players on Litterick, and you wonder how much the eye is taken off the ball over the last 12 months around, actually, we need to be signing this player, or we need to be capping this player for the future, or we need to kind of be bringing that, all that uncertainty around the coach and the, disaster that was the end of Gatland's reign.
Are you saying that Jockey should go full Pivac from when he left the Scarlets and tell all these boys, look, sign for Cardiff for another couple of years, and we'll give you a Welsh cap as well. So Hamer Webb and everyone else can, just go full, get Jockey to go full pivot.
Yeah. Well, we're all one union. So yeah, but I think I that is something that will be in his thoughts process. If he wants to play, if he goes to, I think Leicester have been heavily linked on with him. That's been popping up on my feeds over the weekend suddenly. Will he won't have a look in for Wales if he's there. But I think his game's improved again. Second half of the season, he's really come on as well, and I think can learn a lot from Josh Adams as well. We didn't really talk about it, but it was a shame that Josh didn't get a try on Friday night. 2 interceptions, and I think one of them he didn't realise a player was chasing him. But it feels like there's a good structure within the club that players can learn, and I think that's what we want to be promoting as well. You come here and you leave a better player, and that environment, encourages players that maybe have got a little bit lost in their career. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't feel like that, but he'd obviously been to a number of clubs, and we've given him a home, and he's repaid that certainly in the last 2 weeks. Anyone who scores a hat trick against the Ospreys, stick a statue up of him in St David's too.
That's that link to the Leicester was from Neil Fissler and Rugby Pass, and it just stank of agent plant to me. Like it was, he might go to Leicester unless you offer him a bit more money, and that's what it struck us. I mean, Leicester are flying at the moment. They've got some very good wing options there. I'm not sure Gabe walks into that team, despite his recent form and stuff. So yeah, that would be an odd move to my mind, but hopefully he does hang around. Sticking with the wing just for one last one then, Tony. It might be difficult to answer this really because we just haven't seen hardly anything of him, but Regan Grace has come in on a short term from Bath. I think he started twice. He had a bit of a stinker. Was it Connacht? Was it Connacht or Benetton? I can't remember. He got run around the outside of a couple of times. Is there something there that says, just keep hold of him and try and see if he can develop a bit more in rugby union, or is our wing depth so good that we just don't need to do that at the moment?
I'd like to, but also I'd like to defer to Fordy because I think he's probably watched a lot more of him from a highlights package perspective, to be honest. And
it's difficult because I feel like he's had such injury troubles, and he went to Australia last year with Wales, which I thought was really pointless. But if he gets a good pre-season under his belt, then and kind of gets to grips with rugby union properly when he's not rehabbing the whole time, then we could have a good player here. But I don't think he's got the same sort of pace he had when he was playing rugby league. And it's a question of what are his options going forward as well. He's hardly going to walk into a rugby league team, I don't think, now, having not played for, was it 3 years? Something like that. So, I'd like to keep hold of him and give him a proper pre-season, but I wouldn't want to break the bank on him. But I don't anticipate him playing again this season unless kind of the last game of the season. If we get a win against the Bulls, Stormers might be a good chance to get a run out. But other than that, I think get a proper pre-season in him and then kind of get to grips with Union properly, and then hopefully just means better depth on the wing next season.
Does him re-signing depend on Cabango?
It's a good question.
Yeah, Theo I think he is out of contract this summer as well. He's obviously had another setback to his. I reckon if it was a head-to-head, though, the club would probably side with Cabango just on he's an academy graduate and a bit younger and does know how to play rugby union properly, sort of level as well. But yeah, it would be interesting to see. I guess the wing question is a little bit linked to the centre question then as well, about where we see Millard, and a little bit linked to the fullback question to a degree as well. If we're seeing Beetham a bit more as a utility player, is somebody like Adams or Hamer Webb, who's played a bit of fullback before, going to be covering there a bit more as well? And how many wingers you actually need if we're going to go 6-2 all the time and constantly pick a 10 or a 12 as the outside back option on the bench, then you don't you maybe don't need to carry as many wingers as we have done this season, despite the amount of wing injuries that we have had at the same time, which may also then be linked back to that we're asking them to play 80 minutes every week, even if they are injured, just constantly on the pitch. So, yeah, it's interesting. We'll, as I said, we'll look ahead to next season, looking at the whole squad next week. Hopefully, we'll have an announcement or two in the meantime. But that's I think that's close to us for this week. Any last thoughts from anybody about anything we've discussed today or going forward? All good, lovely. That's when you know it's been a good in-depth conversation on the pod. Thank you, gents, very much for joining me. As I said, we'll be back next week with that spreadsheet looking at the squad for next season. We'll also look ahead to Cardiff's game against the Bulls as that comes the following weekend, and hopefully there's a Rags semi-final to look forward to after they've dispatched Bridgend this week. But until then, thank you all for joining me, and thank you very much for listening. Goodbye.
That was the Cardiff Central Podcast. Please rate, review and share us on socials if you can, and join us again next week for more of the same. And until then, enjoy your rugby.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.